The Orlando Business Journal just released their list of the top zip codes in the Orlando area. We're going to take a look at those two lists that they made, talk about a little bit about those areas. Maybe you're familiar with them, maybe not, maybe they're brand new. But we're going to discuss a little bit about what is attracting so many people to those areas, what the real estate and development and subdivisions are like in that area, as well as what other projects might be going on in and around those communities that has made them so popular. So if you're thinking about relocating to the Orlando area, get your pen, get your paper, get prepared to take some notes, and don't go anywhere. So it is the beginning of August 2023. We're a little bit more than halfway through this year, and it's time, it's that time of year where we kind of take a look and reassess where we're at with everything, look at some of the individual statistics, particularly pertaining to the real estate market, and kind of see, what those trends look like and what might be affecting those trends. And the Orlando Business Journal actually just released last week an article that included two lists. They had the top 5 busiest zip codes, which was basically what zip codes in the Orlando metro area were having the most number of sales so far for 2023, as well as the top 5 zip codes that were the priciest. So what zip codes in the Orlando metro area right now have the highest median prices? Now, some of these cities that made one list also made the other list. And if you got any familiarity with the Orlando metro, you might not be surprised to see some of these towns on these particular lists. So the first list is based off the top 5 areas or top 5 zip codes with the highest median sales price. And number 1 on the list should come to no surprise, it's Winter Park, the 32789, which is the Orange County side of Winter Park. Winter Park has always been known as an affluent area. It's a small town suburb that sits just outside Orlando city limit. And if you're accustomed to a higher standard of living, Winter Park is probably an area that is going to be near the top of your list. So aside from being, just a short distance from Orlando, you're only minutes from downtown Orlando, Winter Park is got a great downtown area itself. Park Avenue in downtown Winter Park is one of the most popular spots probably in all of the Orlando metro area. It's got a ton of history, brick paved line roads, lots of shops, restaurants, retail. And again, this is retail that is probably going to appeal to a more affluent person or lifestyle. A lot of high-end shops and designers is what you'll find along Park Avenue, as well as some really cool and unique retail spaces. Some exciting news that's coming to Winter Park is developers are hoping and planning to be complete with the $50 million renovation project to Winter Park Village. This is another great popular spot outside of just Park Avenue that has a ton of shops, restaurants, a huge movie theater that I think they're redoing as well. They've even added some new retailers as well that are coming in for this grand reopening, as they're calling it. You're going to see additions from retailers like Kendra Scott, Tommy Bahama, as well as restaurants like Ruth Chris Steakhouse. It's set to be complete towards the end of this year, so we'll see what happens. Second on this list is the 34756, which is Montverde. Montverde is one of those towns that often gets overlooked and sometimes not even counted as all, especially as being part of the Orlando metro area. But it actually is. It sits on the outskirts of what might be considered the Orlando metro area. It's in Lake County, just to the north and west of Winter Park. Now, there hasn't been a ton of activity in Montverde. There's only been about 15 home sales that they're basing this off of, and that's a median price point of $761,000. But that's part of that is also because the area is just so small. However, if you've never been to Montverde, what you will see there is nothing like anywhere else in Florida. One of the unique characteristics about Montverde that you're not going to find anywhere else is that it has a rolling hills type of landscape. Most of Florida is pretty flat, but there is a ridge line that actually goes through that area, and only that area in Florida, that has created some pretty impressive hills and peaks and valleys throughout that town. We actually recently just helped a family relocate to this area from up north, and they purchased their home in Montverde. And one of the deciding factors for them, one of the things they fell in love with right away was that unique landscape. They'd never seen anything like that in Florida, and they're not going to except for that area. But it reminded them of where they used to live in the Northeast, and they immediately fell in love, and that's where they ended up finding the perfect house for them. Montverde is not that big of a town, but you're just outside of Winter Garden and everything that it has to offer there, and you're probably only about 30 minutes, 35 minutes away from downtown Orlando, once you jump on the highway. The next zip code on the list is the 34786, which belongs to Windermere. And again, no surprise to see Windermere on this list. They've got a median price point right now for 2023 of $760,000. Windermere is similar to Winter Park in that it has a long history of being an affluent area. This is a great area that is going to have top-rated neighborhoods, top-rated schools, and one of the really appealing factors about this area is that it's only minutes away from the theme parks. We actually did a vlog tour of Windermere probably about a year ago, and if you have not seen that video yet, definitely click on that link, check out that video if you want to learn more about just the Windermere area as a whole. Number 4 on this list, and this was a surprise to me that it wasn't actually higher up on the list, but that is the 32836, which is the Golden Oaks community. If you're not familiar with that community, that is actually the neighborhood that sits within Disney World property. There's actually been about 133 transactions that have taken place so far in 2023, and that was even a surprise to me, just that the number and the volume of that, because you have a lot of multi-million-dollar homes mostly in that community. And you know, the higher the price point you go, the less number of people that you're going to have that are going to be in that price point. So a lot of times you might not see as many sales. And again, this isn't a huge area in that neighborhood or in that town. It's really just a neighborhood. So far in 2023, Golden Oaks has seen actually a lot of activity. They've had just over 130 home sales, and the median price right now for this year is around $700,000. This is a pretty cool and unique neighborhood because again, it sits on the Walt Disney World property. It's just east of Fort Wilderness campgrounds, if you've ever been over in that area. You have a lot of multi-million-dollar homes. A lot of the residents that live in there, they don't even live there full time. This is like a second home for them, to just give you an idea of, you know, how affluent that area can be. One of the things that I recently learned, though, that I thought was pretty cool is that they're actually planning to put in condos as well that are going to be attached to the Four Seasons, but also be a part of the Golden Oaks community. Again, if you've never been over into that area, you have a gated entrance to get you in, and if you drive down the road, there's another gated entrance to take you within the Golden Oaks community and the single-family homes that are within there. But if you keep going farther down, there is another entrance that brings you to a Four Seasons resort. And that is where they're planning to add additional condos. Now, it's not going to be a ton. I think from the latest numbers that I saw, it was only going to be around 40 or so condos. But this is going to be another opportunity at a little bit lower price point too, I would imagine, for some other people that want to be close to Disney, to give them that chance to move in. Rounding out the list for the top 5 priciest zip codes so far in 2023 in Orlando is Baldwin Park. I've talked about Baldwin Park in other videos that we've done. This is one of the most popular areas in Orlando. It's no surprise to see them on this list. That zip code is the 32814, and it's got a median price for 2023 right now of $680,000. This is a cool area. It sits on the northeast side of Orlando, just outside, kind of bordering Winter Park. This is a mixed-use community, probably has some of the best walkability that you're going to find in the Orlando area among some of the different neighborhoods, definitely among some of the ones that we've discussed on this list so far. But this actually used to be a former U.S. naval base. And what makes this area so cool is that, you know, it's so close to downtown Orlando, and typically when you're getting closer and closer to a downtown metropolitan area like Orlando, it's going to be a lot of older construction. You're not going to find a ton of newer development there, but because this was a U.S. naval base for so long, and it wasn't until the early 90s that it was vacated and then turned into a housing project by developers, you have a lot of newer construction in that area that is, again, minutes away from downtown. But again, it has a ton of walkability for that area, and it's a mixed-use area of single-family homes as well as condos and retail shops. There's some new development in the works for Baldwin Park. Developers are looking to add anywhere from about 250 to a little over 300 new housing units. That is going to be mostly condos and apartments, but it's definitely going to be an opportunity for, you know, even more people to get into that Baldwin Park area, and especially if they're not at that single family price point yet, these condos and apartments is going to open that door for, you know, a wider range of individuals. Now, that is the top 5 priciest zip codes so far for 2023 in the Orlando area. Let's talk now about what the top 5 most popular zip codes have been so far for 2023. Coming in at number 1, and this was a surprise to me, was the 34747, which is Celebration, Florida. Celebration is a small town that sits just south of the Disney World property. It was actually created by the Walt Disney World Company. One of the things that was top of mind with developers and architects when they were designing Celebration was to recreate an old town type of small America. There's a lot of walkability in Celebration. I mean, you can pretty much walk just about anywhere you need to go. There's doctor's offices, you can even walk to the school, you can walk to the church. I mean, pretty much anywhere you need to go in Celebration, you can walk there. You're gonna see a mix of single-family homes as well as condos and townhouses. And again, this is probably one of the most unique areas and towns in all of the Orlando area, because that small town vibe, that small town charm that it has, I mean, you really got to see it in person to really appreciate it, but you're not going to find it anywhere else. So if that's what you're looking for and you really want to be close to the theme parks, Celebration is definitely going to be a spot to look at. Coming in at number 2, and this is really no surprise to me, I kind of saw this coming, was the Horizons West area of Winter Garden, which is the 34787 zip code. This is an area that has really just been exploding over the last few years. A lot of new construction development has been coming in, homes, single-family homes, condos, townhouses, and along with all this new construction, of course, is an explosion of commercial spots as well. Horizons West is on the south end of Winter Garden. One of the things that makes it so popular probably is that it's literally just outside the back gates of Disney World. In fact, one of the more recent developments in that area sits along outside of Western Way at the intersection of what's called Flamingo Crossing and Western Way. If you take Western Way all the way through, it's going to run you right into Disney World property. Coming in at number 3 on the list, again, no surprise to me, was the 34746, which is Kissimmee, Florida. One of the things that makes Kissimmee so popular and why I'm not surprised to see it on this list is it's one of the more affordable towns and cities in the Orlando metro. They've had almost 400 home sales so far in 2023, and the median price point is just over $398, which is definitely a little bit cheaper than some of the other areas that we've talked about on these lists. What's really neat about the Kissimmee area is that it kind of runs east and west, and on the west side of Kissimmee, you're right out the back doors and nearby to the Disney World theme parks and all of those attractions and areas. And then if you go to the other side, on the more eastern side of Kissimmee, it's going to border up and butt up against all the development that is happening in Lake Nona. So if you really like the Lake Nona area, but maybe it's a little bit out of your price point, or maybe you really like the theme parks, Kissimmee might be a spot to consider. One thing I will mention about this area that you want to be cognizant of and be aware of is that because it is so close to the theme parks, a lot of the subdivisions and neighborhoods in Kissimmee do cater to investors when it comes to short-term rentals. So it is a possibility, depending on where you're looking, that you might be next door to somebody that has a short-term rental, and if you're not cool with having a new neighbor every week, then that might be something to consider. I know for me personally, that wouldn't be my cup of tea. However, it is a decent area, definitely from an affordability standpoint for homeowners, and it's definitely a popular location for real estate investors as well. We've worked with a few investors that have purchased rental properties in the Kissimmee and nearby Davenport area. Coming in at number 4 on this list, and not in the same vicinity as some of these other areas that we've been talking about, is the 32771, which is Sanford. Sanford is the most northern city that you're going to find in Seminole County, and probably one of the most northern towns that you're going to find that's part of the Orlando metro area. And this is an area that has, I think, gotten a bad rap in the past and maybe been a little bit underrated over the last couple years, but is really starting to grow and expand and turn itself around. It's got great access to the I-4 corridor, and one of the things that's really cool about the Sanford area is that you are kind of like in between Daytona Beach area if you want to hit the beach side, but then also you're kind of in between from downtown Orlando and all the theme parks in the other direction. So it's really a happy median point for either way. The downtown area is really neat. It's rich in just history. I mean, you've got got original brick paved roads that go along the different intersections. A lot of original housing throughout there as well. I mean, we're talking houses that can be anywhere from 80 to 100 years old. But community leaders have really done a lot to try to revitalize that area. You've had a huge influx of restaurants, retail shops popping up in there just outside of that downtown area. You've had a lot of new construction development of condos and townhouses. We actually just helped a family close or selling their townhouse a couple months ago that had great access to that downtown Sanford area. And one of the things that was neat about that particular development there was that the Sunrail station that is in Sanford, it was right outside the back gates of that development. So one of the selling points for that neighborhood was that if you could use the Sunrail, you didn't even have to leave the neighborhood. You had your own private access right out that back gate, right onto the Sanford platform there for Sunrail, and to get wherever you needed to go. Other than the downtown area, continuing to blossom like it has over the last couple of years, one of the other really attractive things about Sanford is if you actually go on the west side of Sanford, you're going to have a little bit different feel out there. Out on that side, you're going to find newer construction. You're going to find homes with bigger acreage, larger lot sizes. And one of the things that's neat about that area is that you're bordering along the Heathrow, Longwood, Lake Mary, Markham Woods corridor. And that is a pretty affluent area. You're going to find, estates up in that area, multi-million-dollar homes. And so if you're looking for a little bit more, upper tier, upper echelon, more affluent lifestyle and housing, but maybe you don't want to pay necessarily that Heathrow Lake Mary price, you can find some really nice homes on some really large lots in the Sanford side, and you're going to have a little bit lower price point as well as a little bit cheaper property taxes as well. Last one on this list we talked about earlier is the 34786. I'm talking about Windermere. Again, no surprise to see Windermere on this list. It's usually one of the more expensive zip codes, and it's usually one of the more popular zip codes. That's one of those affluent areas that sits just outside of the theme park areas of Universal and Disney World. You're just outside of the Dr. Phillips area and its restaurant row. So a lot of unique selling points to Windermere, especially if you're looking for lakefront living. That's a lot of areas where you're going to find that lakefront living are going to be along in Windermere. There isn't a ton of new construction that's popping up in Windermere, but there are a few custom developments and custom homes that are springing up in some little pockets in there. If you're looking for a wider range or not necessarily custom built homes, that's going to be more in that Horizons West area, which is also nearby Windermere that we talked a little bit about earlier. So really, all in all, we only had one town that made both lists, and that was Windermere. And really, when it comes to all of these towns that we've talked about today, they've all got their positives and negatives, things that some people like or might not like. But overall, these are all some pretty good areas. And what's crazy is that this is just a fraction of what's available and all the places you can live in the Orlando metro area. This is a huge area that we cover. And some of these towns also, we've done some vlogs and some videos and tours, a little bit more in depth and everything. So if you haven't checked those out, definitely, go to our channel, check out those videos. And while you're there, if you haven't hit that subscribe button, if you haven't hit the notification button, do that as well so you don't miss out on any of the great content we're putting out on a weekly basis. My team and I are working with families every single day who are relocating to and from the Orlando metro area, and we absolutely love it. But you got to reach out to us. Give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email, however you'd like to communicate, we got your back.